Welcome to the FIsionaries podcast, sponsored by Alchemy. I'm your host, Jim Roos. The FIsionaries podcast shines a light on the financial institutions at the cutting edge of digital transformation, providing with the tips and tricks to elevate your digital game no matter what size your organization is. Today, we're honored to have Dave Gorham, Vice President of Digital Solutions, Rebecca Forsberg, Director of Enterprise Application Support, and Salinna, Director of Digital Product Operations at Apple Federal Credit Union. They share how a clear focus, incremental implementation, and a strong partnership with third-party solution providers is essential for a successful digital banking transformation. They also share how member feedback to build an innovation roadmap and continuously monitoring the effectiveness of changes implemented limits missteps along the transformation journey. Digital transformation differs at every organization. The vision of where an organization wants to end up is different at every organization, as is the speed of the process and what every organization focuses on. We're really lucky today to have people from Apple Federal Credit Union on the FIsionaries podcast. So when we talk about digital transformation, we really have an organization that has to work together. We have three people on today. So I'm going to start, Dave, with you. Dave Gorham. He's a VP of Digital Solutions for Apple Federal Credit Union. Dave, can you give a little background of yourself and also a little bit about Apple Federal Credit Union, and then we'll get on to the other two guests on today's podcast.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'm VP of Digital Solutions at Apple Federal. I have been with the company for 22 years. I think I'm counting this correctly. So Apple Federal, just give you a quick history, started in 1956, been around initially to serve teachers and was pretty much exclusive to the education community for the bulk of its existence. Up until around 10, 15 years ago, we started to lean more towards community. Since we've leaned towards community, our membership has ballooned, our asset size has grown pretty significantly in that time. When I started, I think we were 400 million. We're darn near 5 billion at this point. So a significant increase in size. And our techniques, tools, all of that has updated and become more modernized. But what brought us here today was the digital transformation that we've gone through.
So we also have Rebecca. Rebecca, you're Director of Enterprise Application Support. What does that entail, and what's your career look like?
Thank you, Jim. So in my current role as the Director of Enterprise Application Support, currently I oversee technical support, QA, release management, and incident management for our enterprise applications, which include our Alchemy digital banking, our core banking system, as well as our digital account opening and membership opening application.
And Salinna, you're Director of Digital Product Operations. Can you tell a little bit about what your background is, but also about what your role is at Apple?
Sure. So I handle the front-facing side. So we handle the operations portion where we troubleshoot for frontline as well as anybody internally, and then we triage it over to Rebecca's team. We also handle the product side, so we help strategize our roadmap of what we want to plan to do internally on the digital aspect of it. So that's what my two teams that I oversee.
So Dave, getting back to you, a little bit about the strategic vision. You've been with the organization for quite some time, and to get any transformation process started, you have to get an idea as to what you're trying to achieve. So can you talk a little bit about your overall strategic vision, how far back it was, and what elements you thought initially would this entail?
So over the years, I've had a number of roles at Apple, right? I didn't start off just in digital. I've had a number of roles leading up to that. But it was probably 5 to 7 years ago, I started to notice, even though I wasn't involved with digital at the time, that there was definitely a need for digital. We were seeing our transaction volume start to slowly migrate from branch to a digital channel. Our digital online account opening started to become a little bit more robust. And what I did also notice is that our leadership was leaning very much somewhat at that time towards digital self-service, a way to more embrace the member, meet them where they are, on their couch, for example. So over that, if I was to go back 7 years, since 7, 8 years ago, and I'm throwing a dart at a timeline, but it's about that long. As we moved forward over the last 2-3 years, we did definitely see a change in the strategy. We started to get a lot more feedback that digital was the future. We saw more robust movement of transaction volume, of course, moving from branches to online. Our online account opening system we had to swap it out because it needed to be more robust to assist. But our leadership saw the potential there, and they were looking forward as to what the business would look like 5 to 10 years from now, probably. So as we were leaning into digital within the last couple years, we saw that leadership was looking for a robust digital strategy. And that's kind of where I entered the picture with a transition from one job role to VP of Digital Solutions. And working with Rebecca and Salinna and a number of others throughout the company, we came up with a strategy. And leadership was very accommodating to that strategy. We didn't have one before. We presented our findings to our executive leadership team. And in our ELT fashion, they were all for it at that time. So although it had some nuances that needed to be worked out, our leadership team really is the one that got behind it and pushed it.
Dave, just to follow up on that, were you consider that your organization was playing more of a catch-up role, or was it really looking at the future and trying to I wouldn't say leap ahead, but was the vision more beyond where you are to that point?
Yeah, I think there was two things at play. One, where did we want to get to? And where were we at that moment in time, and what needed to be done to catch us up in some ways? So we had switched from WRG to Alchemy, and in that transition went reasonably smoothly, and Salinna and Rebecca can tell you more about that. But it opened up opportunities for us when we were on Alchemy to have a lot more self-service, a lot more integration partners than we had previously. But I would also say that we were probably a little bit behind. We needed to provide some stability to Alchemy. We needed to provide some stability to the business. We needed to get a lot more enrollment and transparency about digital's trajectory. And our leadership team helped us with that tremendously.
So, Rebecca, you're in charge of the back office of the applications. And when you're doing a transition, you're transitioning from legacy systems to modern digital systems. And we talk about this often on the podcast, where you can't make the front-facing part of a digital platform, the phone in many cases, work right unless you fix the back office. You have to look at that. What did you have to do from a technical standpoint and from a visionary standpoint and from a human resource standpoint to really transform the back office from an analog to a digital platform?
Yes. So before we could even get to technical, we have to really highlight some of the departmental structure changes that Dave was kind of alluding to. So in our legacy system, we were all in one department. So Salinna's team, my team, we were just one big happy family with the way we had projects, implementations, support, operations, but ultimately found that that was not going to work for us. What we wanted to do was to pull out strategy and implementation from day-to-day operations. So that was one of the first moves we made. The thought process being there is that strategy we ultimately would suffer if day-to-day operations were in the same team, because if you have an incident or you have a problem, you're going to stop what you're doing and then go in to resolve that problem. So that was kind of the first change. We pulled out strategy and implementation, and those went to the IT department. Unfortunately, we found that also did not necessarily work, because when you pull out strategy implementation, directly from operations, the voice of the member is really what was a disconnect there. So ultimately, where we have landed, which seems to be working well for us, is so my area kept technical ownership, support, QA, release management, product ownership. So Dave and Salinna are more closely aligned to the member. And then Salinna's operational team is our front line of support. So that is really what has helped us move the needle forward in our goal for digital transformation. from the more technical perspective, back to get to your original question, the items that we had to do were really look to what we wanted out of a new system. So really defining our requirements and capturing what was missing in our legacy system. So for us, that really included a plan to migrate from an on-prem infrastructure to a cloud-hosted infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
And then we also wanted robust fraud and security tools so that Alchemy was able to fight on our behalf in any type of incident.
When you look at what's going on right now, in the past, organizations would build from within in many cases, or they pick a core provider. When you're picking a new provider today, what role do they play in the innovation process? In other words, them bringing ideas to you as to where you need to go. And from your perspective, how do you integrate it so that your current team doesn't feel threatened in the back office as far as things that are going to be done differently? I mean, it's a different aspect to what's being done where you really have to deal with the human resources issues as well.
To your point, I find it as an advantage because then you can allow your team to work more efficiently because you are selecting a vendor who can then take some of those back operation challenges that we're having. On our legacy system, we were seeing a high amount of fraud. And then with our own infrastructure, it was our teams that had to be very reactionary and jump to the front lines to resolve these issues for us. Whereas now in the vendor selection process, we can make that a requirement that that is something we want the vendor to do on our behalf. And this transfer of this task ends up making us more efficient in the back office.
So, Salinna, we've talked about the back office. We've talked about the overall overarching structure of where you want to land. But it's interesting because Rebecca referenced it a bit saying, geez, we thought this would work really well. And then all of a sudden we realized that, geez, we have members to worry about. Not that was an aha moment, but it's some of these things, I talked about it at a previous podcast a few days ago that if you change the color of an aspect of the mobile banking app, people are going to go, they freak out. They overthink what's been changed, but people don't like change. They don't like it internally when you're changing their jobs. They don't like it externally with your customer care people that are front-facing. But at the end of the day, no matter if we talk about it all the time or we don't, it's the member that has to be satisfied. It's the member that's got to feel good about this. So as you started to do digital transformation, what were some of the early aspects with regard to member feedback about what they liked or didn't like, or even more importantly, what did you learn about how to communicate the new advancements to a member base that was used to, I'm going to go way back, maybe almost to Dave's time, updating passbooks?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially going through the changes. So like Rebecca said, we were one team. I actually been at Apple for quite some time as well, since I was 19. So I'm gonna say my age in this podcast. So I started in frontline and then moved over to the e-services side. But it really, having one team was great because you do have a hone in on the member voice. We had the front-facing side, which I was a phone agent on the digital team, to be able to hear feedback real time of what people are experiencing with our digital platform. We had two digital platforms. I went through that change. We had DI into WRG and then into Alchemy. So it's different changes that we've made and different needs that come in. But the way we listened was more reactive rather than proactively listening. So especially when it came to issues. So we were more of an issue response team rather than proactively looking at the data, at what trends that we can see on the logs that we have control of to see what we need to change. With our membership base, luckily they've been very, very fluid with change. They like the change as long as we communicate it out. Very effectively, very timely. We always have a very good communication timeline to let our membership know that something's going to change. This can impact you, but the benefits of this change is going to help streamline, make it faster, easier for you. Going to Alchemy, we are now rapidly releasing smaller incremental items for our members, which is more valuable than doing a big release. That's what we've noticed, the change, and we've noticed it more effectively of people adopting to that type of change.
So one thing we've seen is that the fear of the employee, both on the front facing but also back office, where we all kind of put out of our mind the fact that every time we talk digital banking, new innovation, there's somebody out there that's feeling like this is my job at risk. Salinna, how do you work with your employees to make them realize that we're going to bring you along as well, that your job's not going to be at risk? It's going to change, as you can see from what's going on. You just walk in a branch and see that the number of transactions being done in a branch is way, way down for the first time ever. I go back to the introduce ATMs, they'll get rid of transactions, introduce online banking, they'll get rid of transactions. All it did was add transactions. The reality is digital banking, the way people learn how to, especially since COVID, how to use their mobile device to do banking, has made it so we know that we're going to make some adjustments on the people side. How do you communicate at Apple? Because I think this is a very interesting aspect, especially for those organizations such as yours that is really moving forward quite quickly. How do you build that communication in that this is good news for everybody?
It's honestly transparency. As long as you're transparent with the employees, they are aware. Also, telling them the benefits of not just for our members, but for them. It makes their job easier. There are little things that you can save 5 minutes rather than taking 30 minutes to do a task that they need to do. So for us, it's been very, very effective as far as, okay, digital, we move very rapidly. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 30 days, but we can tell you what you can expect within the next 30 days, and this is what we know. So that type of communication now to the staff has been very, very effective, and it's different type of communications because you have your own department, you have external stakeholders that are different departments. So it's the same type of communication, but different type of wording that you want to make sure that you're hitting, just so they're aware. And it's more of the enrollment piece as well. You got to get them enrolled, excited about the change that's coming. And then they are more on board, especially when you embrace the feedback that comes back to you as well. A lot of people are very resilient when you say, hey, this is going to change, but I don't want any of your feedback at all. It's going to change no matter what.
Yeah.
So it's better to say, this is going to change, but what do you think about it? And people are a little bit more resilient to that, especially when it comes to rapid change like this. And our organization, it went from legacy to this digital transformation very quickly, and it's the quickest we've ever moved. So seeing that from the top down and seeing that support that you have from leadership also helps as well.
So Dave, from an overall planning process, obviously you've got to make a decision as to what implementations we do, how fast we go. You're getting feedback. You obviously made a change to Alchemy based on the ability to do new things. I mean, that's how everybody makes a decision. When you look back over the last, let's say, 2 years, what are some of the implementations you've put in place that you're pretty doggone proud of?
It was early 2023, late 2022. And to Salinna's point, we were actually starting to dive into member sentiment. We were picking up call volume. What was the call type? We have a tool called Operative Intelligence telling us the root cause analysis of the calls. And we kind of segmented the problems into about 5 or 6 general categories. The biggest one being payments. So let's take this one for a second because it was 21 to 25% of our call volume. It's still hovering around 25% of our call volume. But what we did is recognize the problem. And once we did that, we were able to go out and start sourcing vendors. Now, we attacked the problem a little different than we had in the past. We looked at it more from a platform view. What vendors can we put onto the same or similar platform that we've already got, instead of going direct with people who are not on a platform or don't have an integration? So the first way to get faster that we did was to do a vendor vetting process where we, as digital, working with IT and EAS, we vetted a number of vendors before we even put them in front of the company. Second, we let the company have some input on which vendors that they preferred, which ones they liked, but we had some criteria as to what vendor to select.